All right, Shabbosai, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's share. To thank our annual Talmud Torah sponsor, the Tilson Mishpacha of Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all the Shumer and Roshos this year as a zchus for Besoros Tavos for Am Yisrael. Our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Adar, Terry and Steve Zinn, in loving memory of Terry's father, Dr. Harry Khan, Zichron Livracha, C. Hirsch Ben Yosef HaKohen, and the Ziv, Levin, and Berman families in memory of William Ziv Shmuel Ben Yisrael, Zichron Livracha. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the Neshamos Havin Aliyah, the families in Nechama, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bring all of our hostages home, and our holy soldiers will be successful. B'chol ma'asei yedehim. But so with that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today. Today's daf is Tzadik Beis 92. We are picking up on Tzadik Aleph Amud Aleph, 3 lines up from the bottom. Amrle Antoninus Rabbi. Again, but incredible, still more incredible, beautiful Gemara ahead of us. They should have made the Daf Yomi cycle like 8 years. Would have given like an extra 6 months to kind of work through Gemaras like this, but all right. Okay. Good. So let's say, 3 lines up from the bottom. Tzadik Aleph from Aleph 91a. Amrle Antoninus LeRebbi. And we'll say, so we're going to have a number of different conversations like this between Rebbe and Antoninus. Remember again, Antoninus was a Roman official. A little bit of historical debate exactly who Antoninus was. Was he a Caesar? Was he someone else? So we'll just go with the idea that he was one of the Caesars. So fascinatingly enough, he developed a relationship with Rabbi Hudanossi, with Rabbi. And so the Gemara records multiple conversations between the two men who had tremendous respect for one another. And Antoninus actually helped out Rabbi on a number of different occasions. So Antoninus says to Rabbi the following: Go for the Shema. This is incredible. The body and the soul have the ability to kind of exempt each other from judgment. Meaning, essentially, is another way of saying body and soul have the ability to blame each other for failure. How so? Kesad. Guf Omer. Neshama chatas. The body could say it's clearly the neshama's fault that I've sinned. How so? So listen to this cheshbon. Shiom shapir shemeni harini mutal kevin domi mekever. Because the body could say, look, I'll show you the raya. From the time that the neshama left me, I have not gotten myself into any trouble, right? The moment that the neshama left, what am I doing? I'm just laying here in the grave. So clearly, again, who is the instigator of all of my life's problems? It clearly was the neshama. Or the neshama could say, Guf chata. No, it's the body that sinned. What's the proof? Shinyam shepirashti mimenu harini porachas ba'avir kitsipar. Because the neshama can say, look at me. From the day that I left that fashtunk in the body, look what happened. I'm flying in the heavens like a bird. I'm free like a bird, right? So body says it's clearly the neshama's fault. The neshama says it's clearly the body's fault. So listen to this. So what Antoninus was asking, what's the question over here? Antoninus was questioning, so what is the mechanism of divine judgment? So how does HaKadosh Baruch Hu hold a person accountable when essentially a person is composed of these two opposing forces, and it's not clear who has responsibility ultimately for the failure of man? So this is beautiful. So Rabbi said, let me give you a mashal. I'll give you a little mashal. 6 in here. Good. I'll give you a little mashal. Listen to this. This is great. A king had a beautiful orchard. Look at that, we're flying already. And in the orchard or in the field, the king had very nice dates. Bachoros knows. Very nice dates, right? Or very nice figs. Now the king put there 2 watchmen to watch over the field. One of them was crippled and one of them was blind. So I guess he got it at a discount. Again, so these were the watchmen over the field. So the Gemara said, so the crippled one said to the Suma, said to the blind one, Bechoros naos ani roa. I see that there are some really nice figs in this field. Ba veher kivani v'navim la'ochlam. So the crippled watchman says to the blind watchman, let's do this. Put me on your back. We'll use your legs, my eyes, and together we'll be able to partake of the figs. So sure enough, so sure enough again, the crippled one got on the back of the blind one, and they went together and they consumed the figs. So sometime later, the owner of the field comes along and he says, where are my figs? So apparently they did a pretty good job consuming the figs and ate a lot of figs in a relatively small amount of time, or whatever, a prolonged amount of time. So the owner comes back and says, by the way, where are my figs? So Amrlo Sumo, Klum Yeshli Naim Liros Ma'asa. I'm sorry, Amrlo Chiger, Klum Yeshli Raglaim Lahalech Bahen, Amrlo Sumo, Klum yesh einayim liros. So again, what happened? So the watchman denied liability. How did he deny liability? So the blind guy said, what do you want from me? I don't have sight. It couldn't have been me. The crippled guy says, what do you want from me? I don't have legs. Clearly couldn't be me. So what does the Baal HaSada do? Here kiv chiger al gabi suma v'dan osam ke'echad. So the owner of the field literally again put the crippled one on the back of the blind one and judged them as one entity. So you're right, as individuals, there's no liability. But as a joint unit, you actually have culpability. Afa Kodesh Baruch Hu, Mevi Neshama, V'zarka Baguf, V'dan Osam Ke'echad. So Rabbi essentially says to Antoninus, you're right. The body by itself and the soul by itself could both potentially deny liability. So what does Hashem do? He brings the neshama and literally he throws it into the guf. V'dan osam ke'echad. And ultimately, again, he goes ahead and he judges them as one entity. Shneimar Yikra al Shamayim Me'al ve'al ha'aretz ladin amo. Yikra al Shamayim Me'al, he'll call to the heavens above, Zu neshama ve'al ha'aretz ladin imo, and he calls to the earth for judgment together with it. Zehaguf. So both are really fascinating. So I'll tell you something amazing. Rabbi Yitzchak Berditchev, Zechuso Yagin Alina. The Rebbe says, but still, it's not fair. Why should the neshama be held liable for the sins of the body? At the end of the day, let's be honest, it's not the neshama that sins, it's the guf that sins. So why would the neshama be held accountable for the sins of the body? Listen to what the Rebbe says. This is classic Rabbi Levi Yitzchak. The Rebbe says, because the neshama didn't try hard enough to stop the body. He says, because sometimes what happens is when the body gets all revved up to commit the sin, the neshama's like, I'm out. That's not a direct quote to the neshama, but you understand, right? In other words, like I'm out. I'm not doing this. I just like, I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want to be involved in this. And the neshama absents itself. And I believe Yitzchak says, neshama, how dare you? How dare you? A chutzpah. You absent yourself when the body is struggling. Dafka, when the guf is struggling, that's when you need to be there even more. Dafka, when the fires of desire are burning, that's when you have to be there even more. A chutzpah, that you decide to walk away because now it's a little bit too difficult. That, says the Rebbe, is why the neshama is held accountable in the sins of the body as well. You should have tried harder to stop. And dafka, when the struggle is most acute, that's dafka when you don't walk away. I would say, and it's such a profound yesod. Human nature is, I'm willing to be present, whatever present in a relationship with other people, relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. I'm ready to work on myself, whatever it might be. Until when? As long as it's okay, as long as it's manageable. But how often in life do we walk away from things because they get too difficult? Now again, obviously, are there times in life when you have to walk away from difficult circumstances? Of course. But more often than not, says the Rebbe, dafka, when it gets hardest, is dafka the time you have to be most present and you have to try hardest. The neshama is held culpable because when the body was struggling most, that's when the neshama really needed to be there. But instead, the neshama absented itself. Incredible. All right, let's go back there. Antoninus said to Rabbi, it's great. These Gemara is like, yeah. It's impossible. This is, seriously, for me, this is like Lifnei Iver. It's like, we're switching to Amud Yomi until the end of Sanhedrin. And then Amir Hashem, we'll pick up with the rest of Klal Yisrael. So the says, Antoninus Rabbi, so listen to this. Antoninus asked Rabbi, and I will say, by the way, you see from the questions, these are not, I would say, sometimes when the Gemara records questions between Jews or non-Jews and Jews, the questions are often baiting questions meant to somehow, poke holes in our theology. If you notice, that's not the nature of these questions. Antoninus has actually like a real theological curiosity and just like a real world curiosity, which is why, by the way, Rabbi takes the time to answer so many of these questions, because he recognizes this is not Antoninus being difficult or trying to disprove us. This is Antoninus legitimately curious. So Antoninus asks Rabbi the following question. Listen to this. Why does the sun rise in the east and set in the west? Set in the west. You know, saying I have to have a new appreciation for this Gemara, because last couple of days I was davening Plag. So if you're ever here in this shul by Plag Mincha, the sun is blaring through those windows. Those windows. It happens to be, which is the most beautiful, beautiful thing in the world. But sometimes, we don't appreciate the way we're busy the whole day, often indoors the whole day. But mamish, if you sit over here a little while, you'll see the sun coming up over here. And mamish, by Plag, you'll see it setting over there. In any event, Antoninus asks, why is it that the sun comes up in the east and sets in the west? Amalei. So this is interesting. So Rabbi says, what's your question? And if it was the reverse, so in other words, and if the reverse, and if it was the reverse, you would ask me the reverse. Why does the sun rise in the west and set in the east? Well, in other words, Rabbi was asking, what's your question? What's your question? No, here's my question. No, I'm just asking, why not just have the sun rise in the east and set in the east? Why does it have to rise in the east and set in the west? That's my question. Why, in other words, why does the sun need to traverse to the other direction? Amrle is so beautiful. Kedei litain shalom lakona. In order that the sun should give shalom aleichem, should give shalom to the Ribono Shalom. Now, what does that mean? If you look at Rashi, I will say Rashi is on both sides. By the way, I also feel a lot of nechama not finishing the daf, because even Rashi couldn't get it together on one side of the page, right? Rashi took over both sides. So if Rashi needs both sides of the page, it makes sense that this takes us a little bit longer as well. So look at Rashi. Rashi on the right-hand side, Kedei litain shalom lakona, la kadosh baruch hu, shashchina b'ma'ariv. What does it mean the Shekhinah is in the west? So remember again, using the Beis HaMikdash model, so remember the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies, was situated in the westernmost part of the Beis HaMikdash. So that's what it means when it says that the Shekhinah's in the west. So therefore the sun Kiviyachol comes and bows down before HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the west. And it sets, because when it sets, it goes down representing bowing. So the Shekhinah itself, so the sun itself bows to HaKadosh Baruch Hu at the end of every day. So beautiful. Shneimar utzva shem lecha mishtachavim. Arlei v'sisi ad palga v'sisi ad palga d'rakia v'titein shalom v'teil. So I don't understand. So asks Antoninus. So once again, why not allow the sun to come like mid-sky? So rise in the east, come to mid-sky, bow there, right? Sort of not bow there. In other words, bow there and then just set. In other words, what Antoninus is asking is, why does the sun have to make its way all the way from east to west? I understand it needs to make its way from east towards west. Why does it have to go down all the way in the west? Let it just come to mid-sky, so to speak, bow down to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and set right there. Good question, to which the Gemara says, Mishum polim va'ovrei drachim, because of workers and travelers. I will say, what does that mean? Take a look at Rashi. Mishum polim dilu kan chaya machshech pitom shekeshachama be'emtza rakia me'ira biyoser usurim shadayin yesh shahos bayom va'yipolin shom malachton ad shechashecha va'ovrei drachim nami lo hayu yodim masayach shoch l'vakesh. Here's the problem. If the sun would set mid-sky, so you both say, let's work backwards. The way the sun currently works is the sun goes down gradually. People know, right? Workers know that the work is there, is coming to an end. Travelers know that they only have a certain amount of daylight left. If the sun were to set while it's mid-sky, this would curtail the workday. This would create a problem for the workday. This would create a problem for travelers. Therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in order to allow people to work and in order to allow people to travel, allows the sun to continue across the sky and set more gradually in the west. So the sun setting in the west really serves a twofold purpose. Number one, it bows to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and number two, it allows the maximum amount of time for the travelers and the workers. So we'll say, what a tremendous Musar Haskell. What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want to maximize time for? What is he maximizing time for? Working and traveling. What HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants more than anything from us is to work hard and to work for as long as possible and to maximize our hours of productivity. V'haraya, otherwise he could have caused the sun just to set in the middle of the sky. The whole reason why the sun travels from east to west and sets gradually, the whole reason is to give us more hours in the day to work, to give us more hours in the day to travel. What does it mean to travel? I'm at location A, I want to get to location B. Life is all about the travel. Life is all about the journey. Life is all about moving myself forward. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu maximizes time because what he wants more than anything from us is to work. He wants us operating on all cylinders. He wants us maximizing the workday. I'll tell you about your career, right? It could be your material career and your spiritual career. He wants us to journey. He doesn't want us to stay in place. So he maximizes the way that the sun works. Incredible. Such profound questions. Santanina says, by the way, when does the neshama come into the body? Which, by the way, interestingly enough, indicates to us that Antoninus believed in the neshama. Right? He believed in the soul. So he asks, when does a person receive their neshama? Mishas Pekida or Mishas Yisira? So we'll say, so Pekida means literally again, at the beginning of the pregnancy. Now, Rashi points out, remember again the beautiful Gemara Maseches Nida, that the Gemara says that when a woman becomes pregnant, so the malach takes the tipa. So the tipa sounds like literally again, I don't know, what do you call it at the beginning of the pregnancy? What is it, a fetus or an embryo? Embryo. A blast. Okay. Good, fantastic. So the Malach takes the blast and he goes ahead and he brings it before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he says, Tipazu mateh aleh. What is this? That's called Pekida. Because Pekida means to remember. That's where the Malach is saying to Hashem, what is this baby going to be? So Antoninus asks Rabbi, when does the baby get its neshama? Is it at that moment, like when it's the blast? Or maybe no, when it takes on, Sira means literally again, there's more of like a form of a human being. Right? The baby looks, or the fetus looks like a baby. So the Gemara says, Amalei, Mishas Yitzira. So Rabbi says it's from the time that the baby is more well formed. Okay? So Amalei, so Antonin says it doesn't make any sense. So again, he says, it can't be. He says, for example, a piece of meat, right? You can't leave a piece of meat out for 3 days and it won't go bad. In other words, it needs salt. It needs a preservative in order to keep it. So Antoninus was saying was, everything that exists needs a preservative. So just like meat needs salt, so how does the blast, right? How does the fetus exist at any point in time without an neshama? It must be Ella Mishas Pekida. So Antoninus says to Rabbi, it must be that the neshama comes into the fetus already from the time that it's a blast, from the moment of inception. So Amar Rabbi said, Davar Zel Lamdani Antoninus. Omer says, so it's incredible. Rabbi said, Antoninus, you're right. You're saying good, right? And furthermore, there's a pasuk that backs up Antoninus. What's the pasuk? So the Gemara says, Shnei Amar Upekuda Secha Shamra Ruchi. So literally again, so the darshan from Pshas Pekida, from the moment of Pekida, from the moment that the Malach brings the tipa, the drop before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shamra Ruchi, my Ruach preserves me, my Ruach keeps me, which I will say seems to indicate that the neshama is given to the fetus, to the entity in its initial blast form. Incredible. Okay, so now that we spoke about neshama, so when does a person get their Yetzirah? So mishas yitzira or mishas yitzia? So interestingly enough, so here the question is it from the time maybe that the embryo, that the fetus is formed, the baby is formed, in other words, that there's sinews, there's flesh, or the time that the baby comes out of its mother, exits its mother. So the Gemara says, Mishas Yisira. So Rabbi says, I responded, from the time that the fetus is formed in utero, ultimately, again, that's when there's Yetzirah. So Adonai says it doesn't make sense. If that's the case, the fetus would kick its way out of its mother. Which I will say, so they hear this? So if the baby had a Yetzirah, the fetus had a Yetzirah, it would kick its way out of its mother. Which tells you something amazing. What does the Yetzirah do? What does the Yetzirah do? The Yetzirah causes us to kick. It causes us to kick. The entire essence of the Yetzirah is to break down boundaries, right? In other words, so the Yetzirah says, okay, I know that this is us, so I don't care. I know that I'm not allowed to do this, I don't care. That's all chap the Yetzirah. But here's the interesting idea. The Yetzirah has a very profound use as well. Because if I somehow am able to take that energy of the Yetzirah and channel it in the right way, then suddenly now I have what? I have a koch inside of me that breaks down boundaries, which, by the way, can be the most incredible engine of growth, right? Everything is about how you harness that power. So again, Antonina says it can't be the baby has the Yetzer Hara, because literally it would kick its way out of the womb. It must be that it receives the Yetzer Hara when it comes into this world. Rabbi says, so Rabbi once again agrees with Antonina, says, you're right. Says, you're absolutely right. Right, it must be that the baby receives it when exiting. Umikra Messiah, and ultimately, again, there is a pasuk that supports this as well. Shene'emar lepasach chatos rovetz. The pasuk says that literally, again, sin awaits you at the entranceway. Now, of course, again, this is talking about Cain. This pasuk is by Cain, but it's a metaphor. Lepasach chatos rovetz, at the opening, at the entry to the world. Sin crouches. The Yetzer Hara is there. And I both say this seems to be the adapted approach as well. Very interesting that the Yetzer Hara comes about ultimately, again, when we enter into this world. But I both say about this yesod, that first of all, it's interesting to see, and we know this from our own lives, that what does the Yetzer Hara do? The Yetzer Hara gets me to kick down boundaries. But again, if I could harness that, if I could channel that, then what a profound engine for personalistic growth. So Gemara says, Reish Lakish Rami Ksiv. So Reish Lakish contrasted to Psukim. On one that says, will say, so bam iver upiseach hara v'yoledes yachtov uksiv az yedali ka'ayel piseach vitron lashon ilaim kinifku midbar mayim v'nachalim ba'arava. So we'll say, so now, interestingly enough, two different Psukim that refer to the Messianic era. So the Gemara wrote to Tchias HaMesim. One pasuk seems to indicate that people come back with all of their physical blemishes. The other pasuk seems to indicate that people come back healed, which I will say is one of the questions that we have. We saw it right in yesterday's daf, right? How do people come back to Tchias HaMesim? Clothed, unclothed? Do they come back with their injuries, with their blemishes, with their disabilities? Like, how do people come back? To which the Gemara says, you're right. In reality, we come back again with our mumin, but then we are healed by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Incredible. I will say now, why not just come back healed? Because again, there's a greater appreciation when you come back with all of your injuries, right? I come back with all of my broken kite. I come back with all of it. And then in Tchias HaMesim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes ahead and heals me. That's tremendous. Let's go back to Ula Rami Ksiv. Ula brings down to Psir. We'll say second wide line on Tzadik Aleph on the base. Ula Rami Ksiv. Bila hamavas netzach umach Hashem demam yal kol panim. So literally, again, death will be swallowed up forever, and Hashem will erase every tear from every face. Uksiv ki anar ben mea shana yamos lo yeh mishum od ol yamim. So we'll say, here's another question: in Messianic era, is there death or is there not death? One pasuk seems to indicate there's no more death. Other pasuk seems to indicate that no, there will be death, but when a person dies at 100, it'll be like the death of a young person, which sounds like we'll live much longer, but there will still be death. So which one is it? Lo kashya, kan be Yisrael, kan ba'ovdei kochavim. One is talking about Jews, one is talking about non-Jews. So apparently, again, by Jews there won't be death, by non-Jews there will be death. I have ba'ovdei kochavim ma ba'o hasam. What are non-Jews doing in Yemos HaMashiach? In other words, which is interesting. Like, is there Tchias HaMesim for non-Jews? Like, what is that? So the Gemara says, my Baal Hasam, Hanach Tichsibahu, V'amdu Zarim, Uru'utson Achem, U'beneinekar Ikar Mekomrim. So I'll say, because again, apparently there will be non-Jews. First of all, there's a whole discussion in terms of like righteous Gentiles, what they have, both in Olam Haba and Yemos HaMashiach. But interestingly enough, this Gemara seems to reflect the idea that Yemos HaMashiach is much more of like a spiritual experience in which we will have others to tend to our material needs. So there'll be a Gentile population to attend to the material needs of Am Yisrael, who will be fully focused ultimately again on their spiritual growth. Now, I'll say, interestingly enough, this is embedded in a whole sub-machlokes, which is, what is the Messianic era, right? What is it? Is it like this supernatural world, or is it pretty much olam kimin hago noheg, a regular world? So again, that's the backdrop to these discussions. That's the backdrop to like what happens with sickness, what happens with death, right? Clothed, unclothed, all of these things are really embedded in that backdrop as to what exactly does the Messianic era look like. Whenever the Gemara has these machloksim, the Gemara always quotes the same pasuk, which is "Ayin lo rasa l'kim beladecha," and I never saw it except for you, Hashem. In other words, we have these machloksim. These questions are fascinating, but at the end of the day, what's the answer? What's the answer? We'll know when we know. We'll know when we know. Okay. Rav Chisda Miksiv. Rav Chisda brought up also contrast of psukim. V'chafra halavana ubo sha'achama kimalach Hashem tzivakos. Uksiv v'haya or halavana ka'or achama v'orachama yu shivasayim ka'or shivas hayamim. So we'll say, interestingly enough, there's two different psukim. First pasuk seems to indicate that the luminaries, the sun and the moon, will actually be darkened in the Messianic era. And second pasuk seems to indicate that they'll shine even brighter, that even the moon will shine as bright as the sun. So which one is it? Which one is it? So the Gemara says as follows: Lokasha kalimos Mashiach kalo olam haba. I suppose say this is interesting. One is talking about the Messianic era, and one is talking about ultimately again Yemos HaMashiach. So I'll say, so what does this mean? So apparently Yemos HaMashiach, in Olam Haba, there's the light of Hashem. Where there is only the light of Hashem, the light of the luminaries is dimmed. In Yemos HaMashiach, that's when all of the luminaries will shine even brighter. Shmuel, but according to Shmuel, who says that there is no distinction between this world and the Messianic era, except Shibud Golios. It was saying Shibud Golios literally means we're not enslaved by any other nation, but more than that, it means everyone leaves us the heck alone, right? Everyone leaves us alone, which, by the way, would be the greatest miracle of all time, right? We don't need your help. We don't need your love. We don't need this. Just leave us alone. That's Shibud Malchios. Plus, of course, there's a recognition, ultimately, again, of the oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So how do you understand this whole thing about the luminaries? This is beautiful. So to speak, in the world to come, in the camp of the Shechina, so you don't need the luminaries, because the Ribbon Shalom himself shines bright. In the camp of Tzadikim, that's where the luminaries shine even brighter. Incredible. Rava Ramiksiv, so Rava contrasts the two psukim, Ani amis va'achia uksiv, machatzti va'ani erpa. So this is interesting. So the pasuk says, literally Hashem says, I brought death and I will bring back to life. Machatzti, I broke and I will heal. So the Gemara says, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Mashi memes ani mechaye, v'hadar masha machatzti ani erpa. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, that which I took life from, I will give life to, and that which I broke, I will heal. This goes back to what the Gemara said before, that how does Tchias HaMesim work? The way Tchias HaMesim works is first, the dead are brought back to life, but they're brought back to life with all of their health issues, handicaps, problems, challenges, and then what happens? Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes ahead and heals them. Almost like to amplify the miracle of Tchias HaMesim. That again, we come back how we were, and then ultimately again the healing process. Of course, we will say the one part that the Gemara doesn't discuss over here, which is interesting, probably the $1 million question is, how old are we, right, when we come back? Like, what age? I'd rather come back a little younger, you know, like, it would be nice. It'd be nice. So that, again, so I was like I said, remember, as many of these questions, so to speak, as we're addressing, there's a million other ones, right? You know, let's say like there are shaylas that ask, like, a person was married more than once, right? Who do they come back with, right? And get a little awkward, you know, like the nice, like how does that work? So there's like a lot of stuff, or you know, what if you weren't happy the first time around? You know, like again, like get a second chance, you know, to do things a little bit differently, you know. So there's a lot of discussions with this. So like I said, the Gemara is attempting to give us insights and give us a window. But at the end of the day, remember, it's always going to be, the picture is always going to be incomplete. So the Gemara goes, so ultimately Hashem says, I cause death and then I bring back to life. Sorry, I'm going to thought maybe it means Hashem causes some people to die, other people to live. Like we see today, Tamalomar, Machatzti va'ani erpa. So therefore the end of the pasuk comes along and says, Hashem says, literally, I broke and I will heal. Just like breaking and healing is talking about the same person, so too again, life and death is also in the same person. And I will say this serves as a proof to Tchias HaMesim. Incredible. Tanya Amar Rabbi Meir, how do we know about resurrection of the dead from the Torah? I will say this is fascinating because here the Gemara is now quoting a pasuk from the Torah. Right? Up until now, most of the psukim, except for like we saw in yesterday's daf, but most of the psukim, as you could see, are from Navi. How do we know that they're from Navi? How do we know? Because we have no idea what they're talking about, right? So that's a Mefurish Raya that it's from Navi, right? So the Gemara says as follows. So now I have a pasuk from the Torah. Az Yashir Moshe B'nei Yisrael Sashira Hazos. So then, right, then it says, then Moshe and Klal Yisrael will sing. Sharlo Ne'emar, it doesn't say they sung, right? It doesn't say as Shar Moshe B'nei Yisrael. Moshe and B'nei Yisrael sung the song, rather, Yashir, future tense. What's the future tense? Mikan L'tchias HaMesim in Torah. This is a proof to Tchias HaMesim. Proof that Tchias HaMesim, right? Future tense, that in other words, there will be a time in the future that Moshe and Klal Yisrael will sing. Kiyotze b'davar, similarly again, Ata Omer, as Yivne Yoshua Mizbeach LaHashem. Yoshua will build a Mizbeach for Hashem. Banalo Ne'emar, it doesn't say he built it, rather, Eva Yivne. Mikan L'tchias HaMesim in Torah. So we'll say what this represents is, there'll be some time in the future when these great people will do these things. There'll be a time in the future where Moshe Rabbeinu will sing. Moshe Rabbeinu is dead. So how's Moshe Rabbeinu going to sing? Elamai Tchias HaMesim. Yoshua will build. Yoshua is dead. So how can Yoshua build? Tchias HaMesim. Elameata Az Yivne Shlomo Bana L'Kamosh Shakot Moav. So also I say, interestingly enough, but the pasuk says that Shlomo Melech, this is actually a crazy pasuk. Shlomo Melech built a Mizbeach for Kamosh, who was one of the deities, one of the idolatries of Moab. Does that mean that Shlomo will build an actual Mizbeach for Avodah Zarah? Ella ma'ala alav akasav ki'ilu bana. So that's a different pasuk. Shlomo Melech never Chas v'Shalom built a Mizbeach for Avodah Zarah. I said, why does it say that he did? Because Shlomo Melech did not curb the Avodah Zarah appetites of his wives. And as a result, his wives worshipped idolatry in his home, and he did nothing to stop it. Because he did nothing to stop this errant behavior in his home, he's held accountable as if he did it himself. Incredible. From where do we know about Tchias HaMesim in Torah? So listen to Shneimar, Ashrei Yoshvei Veisecha Od Yahalalucha Sela. It's beautiful. Tell him. So literally, praiseworthy are those who dwell in your home. Od Yahalalucha Sela, right? They will go ahead and praise you. So the Gemara says, Hilalucha lo ne'emar. It doesn't say they praise you present. Rather, what does it say? Ela Yehalalucha. Future tense. They will praise you. They will praise you. Mikal Tchias HaMesim in Torah. So both say, so what is this future praising? The future praising is a remes to Tchias HaMesim. Beautiful. Says the Gemara, beautiful Gemara. Whoever says Shira, whoever sings to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world, will be privileged ultimately again to sing Shira in the world to come. Shne'emar Ashrei Yoshei Veisecha Od Yahalucha Sela. So I'll say so much to say about this Gemara. What does it mean if you say Shira in this world, you sing praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world? Ultimately, again, you will sing in the Tchias HaMesim on the most basic, on Olam Haba, on the most basic level. What it means is to say, the Olam Haba you'll have is a direct reflection of the Olam Hazeh you create for yourself. There's another piece to this as well. I'll say, what is Olam Haba? What is Olam Haba? The Rambam writes, Olam Haba is tzadikim yoshvim v'ataraseim barashem v'nenem miziv hashchina. So ultimately, again, the righteous sit, right? They sit around the Kadosh Baruch Hu. The deeds of the crown of their good deeds is upon their head, and they derive benefit from the Shechina. That's Olam Haba. I will say, now sometimes a person reads that and they're like, is there like a tea room? Is there like a shweki coming? Is a chalamite? Is that it? Is that it? And I will say, a lot of times we see it and we're like, yeah. That sounds really good. You're right. Olam Haba is only meaningful if at the end of the day, you value a relationship with Hashem and Olam Hazeh. If a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not my priority in this world, then Olam Haba doesn't look all that appealing. Because all Olam Haba is connection to Hashem. So if that is something that I value in this world, and I strive for in this world, then Olam Haba is something amazing. But if Olam Hazeh really is much more all about the material, and all about the enjoyment, and all about the stuff, and all about the acquisitions, which are beautiful and important, but if that's pretty much what life is all about, Olam Haba is a big letdown, a tremendous letdown. So both say, so it's interesting, if you want to enjoy Olam Haba, my Olam Hazeh has to look a certain way. And perhaps that's the Gemara saying over here as well. If you say Shira in this world, right? In other words, if this life is about connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then at the end of the day, Olam Haba will be great. But if not, if Olam Hazeh really is just about the material or just about the mundane, Olam Haba doesn't sound all that exciting to you. Amar Rabbi Bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Minayin l'tches hamesim min haTorah. Shneimar. Where did from this from the Torah? Shneimar. Kol tzofecha nasu kol yachtav yiranenu. Riniru lo ne'amar el yiranenu. Mikan l'tches hamesim min haTorah. So once again, the voices of tzofecha, of those of your neviim, of those who see you, right? They will go ahead and call out yiranenu. They will praise you. Future tense. Once again, future tense, not present tense. Rabbi Bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Asidin kol neviim kulan omrim. Shira b'kolecha. This is so beautiful. In the future, all of the Nevi'im will say Shira with one voice. We'll say the Shnei Emar, Kol tzofecha nasu kol yachtav yiranenu. We'll say, how beautiful is that? All the Nevi'im speaking in one voice, right? All of the leaders of Klal Yisrael speaking in one voice. How incredible is that? How overwhelming is that? How beautiful. That's Emos Mashiach. As we saw, remember, every Nevuah is different. We saw this already before. But nevertheless speaking in one unified voice. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Kol Monei Halacha Pi Talmud, Ki Ilu Goes Lo Minachalas Avosav. So I'll say this is profound. If a person is capable of teaching Torah, but withholds their Torah from their Talmud, withholds Torah from a Talmud, now I'll say, this could be a Rebbe, this could be a parent, this could be anyone. In other words, I have the ability to impart Torah upon someone, but I don't do it. I withhold it. It's as if you're stealing that person's inheritance. Isn't that incredible? So we'll say, so again, I have the ability to convey Torah to someone, I don't convey it. It's as if I'm stealing their inheritance. Shne'emar Torah tzivalanu Moshe, Morasha kihilas Yaakov. Morasha hi l'chol Yisrael mishesh shnei bereishis. So we'll say, you hear how the pasuk refers to Torah? It's a Morasha. Morasha is an inheritance. It's our inheritance from the beginning of time, from Sheshes Yimei Bereishis. Rashi points out there, what does it mean, Sheshes Yimei Bereishis? So again, Rashi points out, T'chsiv Bereishis bara b'shvil HaTorah shnikar Reishis. Remember first Rashi in Torah. Bereishis bara, what does it mean Bereishis? In the beginning Hashem created, Bereishis is a contraction. B'shvil Reishis. Because of that which was created first, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. The world was created for Torah. Torah was given to Klal Yisrael. And therefore, again, if I withhold Torah from someone who I can give it to, it's as if I'm taking their inheritance. Amar Rav Huna bar Bizna, Amar Rav Shimon Chasida. Kol Monei Halacha Pi Talmud. If a Rebbe withholds halacha from a Talmud, in other words, a Rebbe has an ability to teach a Talmud, and he doesn't do so, listen to this, afilu ubrin shemai imam akalanoso. Such a Rebbe is cursed even by fetuses in utero. It's intense. Shnei Amar, monei bar, top of Tzadik Beis, monei bar, yikavu la'om. Ve'ein la'om ela ubrin, la'om means ubrin fetuses, Shnei Amar, ula'om la'om yamatz. Ve'ein kavo ela, klava, kavo means cursing, Shnei Amar, ma'akov, lo kavo kel, by Bilam. Ve'in bar ela Torah. Bar means Torah. Shneimar nashku bar pen yana. So we'll say, what does this mean? What does this mean? Someone who doesn't say that like someone who's mechal Shabbos is cursed even by fetuses. What does it mean? So the Rebbe didn't teach the Talmud Torah, and therefore what? And therefore he's cursed even by the obrin, even by the fetuses. Like what's the pshat with that? We'll say sometimes the worst thing that a person could do is withhold the growth opportunity from someone else. We'll say we make a mistake that sometimes the greatest things we accomplish in life are the things we do for ourselves, and that's not true. Sometimes the greatest things you do in life is the growth that you enable in the other. When you do something for someone else, so what is the Gemara talking about over here? A Rebbe has an opportunity to teach a Talmud. Rebbe has an opportunity to give over halacha to a Talmud, which means you have the ability to be the enabler of someone else's growth, and I don't do that. That's an abdication of the highest level of personalistic responsibility. That's my avoda. Our avoda in life is not only to enable our own growth, but it's to enable the growth of others. And failure to do so, the world curses you for that. Incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. Ula bar Yishmael Omer, menakvin oso kekavra. If you don't, right, if you withhold Torah from a student, literally again, so it means they pierce you like a sieve. Okay, now we'll say now what Rashi points out with this. What does it mean pierce you like a sieve? It means you forget your learning. Just like right, if you put something into a sieve, the contents filter through. A Rebbe who doesn't share his Torah with other people loses his learning. Because if he doesn't share it, what does that show? That shows that he thinks that his Torah is his. Torah is not yours. Nothing, we'll say we know this in life. Nothing is mine, right? Nothing belongs to us. Everything belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And everything that Hashem gives me, whether it's my money that He gives me ultimately to do good for others, or again, it's my Torah that He gives me to convey to others. That's the whole avodah of life. And therefore, if I don't share my Torah with others, ultimately, I lose it. Ula by Shmuel Amar Menakvin. Oh, it's good. Ksiv hacha yikabul la'om ksiv hasam vayikov chor b'dalto va'amar Abaye ki ochla dikitsiri. Literally perforated like a launderer's basin. All right. Vim lamdo. And what happens if you teach someone Torah? So Rabbi says, now this is all the punishment if you withhold Torah. What happens if a Rebbe fulfills his obligation and teaches his Talmidim Torah? What's his reward? Amar Rav Shei says, Zocha lebirchas Yosef. K'birchos ki Yosef. This is incredible. So such a Rebbe, and Rabbi says, by the way, when you say a Rebbe, I just want to point out, a Rebbe doesn't have to be a rabbi, doesn't have to be a Rebbe, right? A Rebbe is anyone who has the ability to give over Torah to someone. So you take your Torah and you share Torah. I can't tell you how important this is. You know, one of the most incredible things that sometimes we don't realize that we have the ability to do is to have a chavrusa with someone. And especially sometimes, again, you know, there are different types of chavrusas. Sometimes we're talking about chavrusa and both of you are on the same level. Sometimes you have a chavrusa with someone and you have the opportunity to really help someone grow in their learning. You become a Rebbe. You become a Rebbe. It's a Rebbe chavrusa. It's a Rebbe chavrusa partnership. And I will say that is the most profound thing. We think whenever we see these Gemaras, we like automatically shift. Oh, it's talking about a Rebbe, a rabbi, a Rebbe. No, this is every single one of us. If you take, all of us have Torah, and all of us could convey it. And if you convey that Torah, what happens? Zocha lebirchas ki Yosef. You are privileged to have brachos like Yosef. Shene emar, ubracha lerosh mashbir. Ve'in mashbir ela Yosef. Shene emar, v'Yosef wa shalit ala aretz. So we'll say, by the way, so what's the pshat? What's the pshat? If someone shares their Torah, they get brachas like Yosef. Why not bracha like Avram? Why bracha like Yosef? And we'll say, what was the entire avodah of Yosef? Yosef took his brachas, and what did Yosef do with his brachas? What did he do with it? He shared it with everyone else. That was the entire essence of Yosef, right? Yosef, after everything that he had been through, had every right to say, you know, forget about the rest of you. Even if I'm not going to take revenge, I'm not helping you. I'm not doing anything for you. But instead, every single bracha that comes Yosef's way, what does he do? He takes it and he uses it to help the other. That was Yosef. That was Yosef at Tzaddik. This is beautiful. Wow. We'll say whoever teaches Torah in this world is zocha to teach it in the world to come. Now, by the way, what does that mean? Once again, remember, we always come back to our question of what's Olam Haba? What does the Gemara mean? Is Olam Haba where you go when you die? Is Olam Haba the Messianic era? Either way, it's really good. Either way, it's really good. Right? I will say that if you teach Torah in this world, you'll be zochim to teach Torah in Olam Haba as well, which I will say hopefully means also that the people you learn Torah with, that Emirat Hashem you'll be zochim to learn in this world and the next world. I will say, can you imagine if we have our chabura, if we have our share in Olam Haba? I feel like we'll be able to move faster, right? I feel like we'll be able to move faster. But Emirat Hashem, I will say, how incredible would that be? So the Gemara goes like the Shnei Amar. Pasuk says, so there's no time in Olam Haba, at least in the afterlife of death, right? That'll be better. So the Gemara says, so once again, by the way, you see this fixation, by the way, with Ches right? I don't know if there's any other Gemara that tries to bring so many rayas for a constant, right? This is now already 3 blot. Feels like 7 blot, but it's actually been 1.5 blot. Right? So 1.5 blot in, right? That again, minayin. So first of all, because again, the notion of Tchias HaMesim is such an incredibly important yisod that the Gemara wants to find as many proofs for it as we can. So minayin Tchias HaMesim min Torah. Shnei Amar, Yechi Ruvain va'al Yamos. Ruvain will live and he will not die. Parshas Vayechi. Yechi Ruvain ba'olam hazeh. No, not Parshas Vayechi. Sorry. Zos HaBracha. This is not the brachos of Yaakov. It's the brachos of Moshe Rabbeinu. Yechi Ruvain va'al Yomos. Yechi Ruvain ba'olam hazeh. Ruvain will live in this world. Va'al Yomos li olam haba, and he will not die in the world to come. Ravina Amar Mehach. Ravina says from here, the Rabbi Misheni Admas Afar Yakitzu. Elu lechaye olam ve'elu lecharfos uludiron. So I'll say, incredibly enough, a number of these psukim, this from Daniel, are actually quite explicit, right? So many of those who sleep in the earth will wake back up, some to the world to come and some for degradation. Ravashi says from here, V'ata lech leketz v'tanuach v'tamol l'garalecha leketz hayamim. And now ultimately, again, you go to your place and rest, but stand, right, literally again, return the garalecha, return for your destiny at the end of days. Well, it's actually interesting because a number of these psukim, we actually say the kvura. This is actually the pasuk that we say after the kavura is completed. Before the Avelim leave the kever and walk back through the shura, walk back through the line, we actually, well, it's not a halacha, but it's a minhag. Many have the minhag to actually recite this pasuk, addressing it to the neshama. Amar Rabbi Lazar, Kol parnes shemani gesat sibar benachas, zoch manhigim li'olam haba. Any leader who leads his flock, who leads his tzibor benachas. Now, what does nachas mean? Nachas means with a gentle kite. A gentle kite is not yelling, is not screaming, is not fire and brimstone, not demeaning them, not benachas. So such a person like this is zocha to lead that tzibor and olam haba as well. Now, I will say, these gemaras really seem to indicate that olam haba here is a reference to Messianic era, right? Post Tchias HaMesim era. Shene Emar, Ki merachlim yinhagim va'amabui mai minali. Mamar Lazar, Gedola Dea, this is incredible, Gedola Dea, Shenitna ben shtei osios. Dea, wisdom. Now we're going to define what wisdom is in a little bit. Wisdom is great. Why? Because it was given between, it literally means between two letters. What it actually means is between two names of Hashem. Shenemar, Kikel Deos Hashem. So we'll say, see that? Deos is mentioned in the middle of Kel and Hashem. So the Gemara says that's incredible if something is given over between two names of the Ribono Shel Olam. Rabbi Lazar says, Gadol Mikdash. The Beis HaMikdash is great. Shenitan ben shnei osios, because it was given over between two names of Hashem. Shneimar, Pa'alta Hashem Mikdash Hashem. Konenu Yadecha. So once again, Mikdash is sandwiched between two names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Maskif de Rav Ada, Maskif de Rav Ada, Karchino Ela Me'ata Gidol Nekama, Shenitna ben shnei osios. Oh, if you're going to use that model, then to come of vengeance. Vengeance is also great because vengeance is given between two names of Hashem. D'chsiv, Kel Nekamos Hashem. Right? The pasuk says, right? Kel Nekamos Hashem. Kel Nekamos Sophia. Amrlei Lemilse Hachinam. You're right. By the way, vengeance has its place. Absolutely. Vengeance. I will say, as much as we always think about vengeance as a negative thing, vengeance is not a negative thing. Sometimes vengeance is very powerful and very appropriate. So why do I need two revelations? Hofah, right, means like a revelation. So why two revelations? Now, it doesn't say revelation twice. It just says Sophia once. But it says Nekama twice, almost like two revelatory Nekama moments. So what does that mean? So the Gemara says, Achas lamida tova, va'achas lamida paranos. So one ultimately, again, about say, could be like a vengeance for good and a vengeance for bad. So a vengeance for good could be like when a Kadosh Baruch Hu repays good, right? To take revenge means to repay. Or it could also mean that sometimes, like we said before, sometimes vengeance is good. Sometimes vengeance is in our favor, especially when it's taken out on those who have oppressed us. And sometimes vengeance, chas v'shalom, could be punitive in nature. So Amar Rabbi Lazar, call Adam sheish bo dea, both is beautiful Gemara. Call any person who has dea, who has understanding. It's as if the Beis HaMikdash was built in his days. So the Gemara says why? Because ultimately, again, as we just said before, Dea is between two names of Hashem, and Mikdash is two names of Hashem. Now, what that means, what exactly that means, any person who has Dea, has wisdom, it's as if the Beis HaMikdash was rebuilt. We're going to come back to that Gemara, so you can underline. We're going to come back to it after we get a working definition of really what Dea means. Fine. Okay. Yeah, let's give it a few more minutes. Rabbi Lazar, actually right now. Rabbi Lazar, call Adam Shish Bo Dea L'Sof Misasher. Any person who has Dea will become wealthy. Shnei Amar, Ubedas Charidim Yemalu Kol Hon, Yakar V'Nam. Rabbi Lazar, call Adam She'ein Bo Dea, Asal Rachim Alav. Any person who doesn't have Dea, ultimately, again, you can't have rachmanas on him. Shnei Amar, Kilo Am Binasu, Akim Lo Yirachamenu Oseo V'Yotzer Lo Yichanenu. Rabbi Lazar, Kol Hanosin Pita L'Mishein Bo Dea, Yisrum Bar Alav. Whoever gives bread to someone who doesn't have Dea, ultimately, again, bad things will happen. So we'll say it's very interesting. Say, see this Gemara, you can't have compassion upon someone who doesn't have Dea. You can't go ahead and give your bread to someone who doesn't have Dea. Now we'll say, now what's the pshat with this? What's the pshat with this? So we'll say, okay, so let me tell you this now. What's Dea? What's Dea? So we translate it as wisdom. But I will say, but what if you think about this just from a basic perspective, what is the core component of wisdom, right? What is like the most basic aspect of wisdom? What's wisdom? So it's interesting. Remember again, Chazal, right? Remember Sachas Brachas that speaks about Havdalah and Shmona Esrei. Chazal said, where did Chazal put Havdalah? Where does Havdalah go? Atachonin la'adam das. The most basic concept of das is the ability to be mavchin, the ability to distinguish between kodesh l'chol. Das and its most big, before you get into all the deeper layers of what wisdom actually means, what wisdom means on its most core level is I could distinguish between right and wrong. I could distinguish between kodesh and chol. I could distinguish between tameh and tar. And I will say that is something that every single person has the ability to do. You know, to be a chacham, right? Because remember again, there's chachma, there's bina, there's da. Okay, so chachma, bina, those might be higher levels, and maybe not every person has the ability to access it. But to have das, to be the kind of person who knows what's right and what's wrong, and to make the right decisions in life, every single person has the ability to meet that threshold. And failure to do so is only one person's fault, and that's mine. And that's why Chazal say, if somebody doesn't have de'ah, don't have rachmanas on them. Don't have rachmanas on them. Why? Because they're hurting themselves. They're not a victim of anything. They're hurting themselves. Someone doesn't have de'ah, don't give them bread, right? Why? Why? Because you are enabling an errant lifestyle. I will say a person has to have a basic moral compass through which they know what's right and what's wrong. And if they don't have that, if you help them, you're enabling them to continue on that broken path. And that's why the Gemara says over here, as when it says, any person who has de'ah, right? Ultimately, again, because what's at the end of the day, there's only really one thing I need in this world to be successful. De'ah. I have to know what's kasher, what's treif, what's tameh, what's tar, what's kodesh, what's chol, what's mutter, what's aser, what's tov, what's ra. And as long as I have that, I'm good. I'm good. The rest, I'll acquire or I won't. But as long as I have de'ah, I will be successful. But conversely, if I don't have de'ah, number one, if I don't have de'ah, it's my fault. Don't blame it on anyone else. If I don't have de'ah, it's my fault. And failure to acquire it is the highest level of personalistic culpability, to the point you can't even help out a person like that. Such an overwhelming and incredible Gemara. And that's why the Gemara says, all right, there's a lot to keep it right. I'm Rabbi Lazar. That's why, again, if you give your bread to someone who doesn't have de'ah, you, the giver, will suffer. Why? Because you are enabling someone. You are enabling someone to continue down the wrong path in life. Shne'emar, lach mecha yasimu mazor tachtecha, vein tvuna vein mazor el yisurin shne'emar, vayar from Eschaya, v'Yehudas mazor, v'amr Lazar. Kaladam she'in bo de'ah, sofa gola. Person who doesn't have de'ah will ultimately be exiled. Makes a lot of sense. Why? Because I will say, if I don't have de'ah, chances are I won't be able to build a solid life. I won't be able to build relationships, right? Because if you don't know what's right and what's wrong, you can't build relationships. It's as simple as that. I will say, right? There are people who refuse. It's not that they can't. They refuse to see right from wrong, and they'll make every single excuse why what they're doing is okay, even though it's clearly not. Can't build relationships. Can't build a home. Can't build a life. That's what it means. The sof gola. You'll be a wanderer. Shne'emar lachin gola ami mibli das. Amar Lazar kabay she'ein bo divrei Torah nishma bo b'layla eishach lasa. We'll say another incredible Gemara. So that's de'ah. We'll say this is a ridiculous Gemara. Any home in which words of Torah are not heard in at night. So in other words, any home in which there's not Torah learning at night, eishach lasa, a fire will consume it. Shne'emar Kol choshech tamal tzfunav tochleo eish lo nofeach yara srid ba'ohalo ve'in srid al tamid chacham srid tamid chacham shne'emar ubesridim asher Hashem korei. Fine. So what does that mean? Any home in which Torah is not learned in at night, fire will consume it. That's a pretty strong thing. First of all, it tells us, very important, the need, in addition to coming to shul for night seder, and the beautiful news page, which again, everybody has an obligation on night seder, even if it's for 15 minutes. Everybody has an obligation for night seder. It's not a shayla. It's not like, oh, I'll dabble in this. It's a chiyuv. It's chiyuv daraisa. When it's yarag val yavar, one of the gimel chamuros, right? So you have to have night seder. I will say, but really, it's actually, I'm not joking around. Like a yid has to come to Beis Medrash to learn a little bit at night, even if it's just for a couple of minutes. I start my morning with Torah Beis Medrash, but in addition to that, person also has to learn at home. Person has to have Torah in their house, right? And it's so important for so many different reasons. A wife should see her husband learning Torah. Children should see their father learning Torah. The walls of my home should see me learning Torah. So what's the pshat when the Gemara says over here that any home in which Torah is not heard at night, fire consumes it. Perhaps it means like this. Night is always a metaphor for difficulties, right? That's like Laila is always a metaphor for difficult times. Perhaps the Gemara means like this. Kol bayis she'ein divrei Torah nishma'in bo balayla, right? So any home in which Torah is not heard at night. In other words, any home where things become difficult, the Torah stops. The Torah stops, right? In other words, as soon as it becomes Laila, as soon as life becomes difficult, the first thing that kind of goes away is Torah. Just understand, Eish ochlaso. Fire, not literal fire. Fire is also destructive. Destructive forces will consume it. If during difficult periods in life, the first thing that gets stopped is spirituality, just understand the fire of the negative circumstances, overwhelming circumstances, will consume that home. The staying power of a home, the staying power of anything in life, is rooted in its connection to Ruchnius. So if even during the Laila periods of life, there is Torah in my home, there is Torah in my life, then I will be saved from the ravaging effects of even the most difficult of life circumstances. Conversely, if in the moment that difficulties set in, the first thing that goes is Torah, the first thing that stops is Torah, then Eshach Laso. Then the fire of every single difficult circumstance will ultimately consume me, consume my home, and consume all the circumstances. So we'll have to stop over, incredible Gemara, we'll have to stop over here, shkoyach. By the way, we did more than a blot today, fantastic. Right, wrong blot, but that's a detail. We'll continue, I think tomorrow is going to be our catch-up day, because Emir Hashem, much shorter Gemara. Emir Hashem, shkoyach everyone, we'll start whenever. Such a schos, shkoyach everyone.
Finish it at night there.
Finish at night there. It's not a bad idea. Not a bad idea at all. Oh, was it on in here also?
Of course, we were testing. We're all looking around.
All right.
Turned it on.
So I called Maisha.